It's important to study history because it's important to learn from history. In the United States in particular, we have a problem with both. We have a problem with studying history, actual history, and therefore we have a problem learning from it. A great example is the current rise in fascism and the conversations surrounding it. Many people will very, very quickly jump to the United States is now 1930s Germany. Even a year ago, I was falling into this, but I have been educating myself, particularly about history, so I can better understand what got us here and how we can get out of it. And what I've learned is that while, yes, 1930s Germany was fascism and eugenics, what I've also learned is they got that from us. I highly recommend this book. I think you can find it on the TikTok shop. They didn't have a ton of copies last time I checked. Somebody got this as a gift for me. I'm going to read a few segments out of this to give you a better idea what I'm talking about. The word race doesn't really appear until the 15th century. One of the things that happens with the Age of Discovery. The Age of Discovery is when Europeans started sailing around the world and colonizing it. One of the things that happens with the Age of Discovery is that Europeans had to confront the presence of people in the world about whom they'd never known anything before. Europeans began to search for reasons to explain why people not only look different, but why they live in different ways, why they have different beliefs. So this is talking about what is essentially the start of race science. I'm reading from chapter 3, Creating Race. It talks about how we went historically from a global society with differences, yes, but wherein race as a concept wasn't used, didn't exist, to explain those differences. With the Age of Discovery and the colonization that came along with it, with the slavery and exploitation required to maintain it, people in power needed to figure out how to continue to keep their power. This chapter talks about how through the passing of laws, race came into existence as a concept in order to continue to subjugate some people and use them and exploit their labor. So because you have this construction happening, you need a way to justify it, essentially. You are systematically dehumanizing a group of people. It's really hard to call yourself civil or benevolent or good unless there are really strong justifications for that dehumanization and exploitation and abuse. This is where race science comes into play. This is where race science comes into existence. This is where race science is completely made up. By the 17th century, there's a racial divide emerging that people begin to see as natural. It's just in the tendency for people to see existing power relationships as having some sort of natural quality to them. At the same time Thomas Jefferson was writing All Men Are Created Equal, he was also calling for investigations into what makes non-white people less equal, less than. He was calling on people to essentially come up with the concept of race science. Find a scientific explanation for why black people should be dehumanized and exploited, and anyone connected to that identity should also be dehumanized and exploited. Historically, sciences of race were less concerned with understanding biological diversity as a product of environment or later evolution than with parsing that diversity for political purposes. Race was imported into science from social practice and not vice versa. I'm reading from chapter 4 now, and in particular, science was created to prove that the hierarchy that was in place was valid and good and justified. Going into this, a lot of times they're looking for explanations as to a disparity in intelligence between white and black people. They're measuring skull sizes to try to prove intellectual disparities scientifically, or to prove a predilection for criminal behavior. But even at this time, they're experimenting on black bodies medically, bringing in an assumed less than human status in order to try to prove a less than human status. It's all just confirmation bias. They're literally trying to find what they want to find. When craniotomy started to be disproved, they turned to other methods of proving racial inferiority, of proving the racial hierarchy they had made up in their heads. And it's important to study this kind of thing so that you can understand what oppressive systems you are casually participating in every day. Do you participate in elitism, classism, racism, inadvertently even, because you haven't analyzed these things and analyzed the language you use and the beliefs you hold, not analyzing what we consider normal, like IQ tests? With craniometric studies under attack, psychologists and other scientists began to base their arguments for race-based intelligence on the results of intelligent quotient tests. In the United States, IQ tests were heavily culturally biased and used to justify discrimination against Southern and Eastern Europeans in immigration policy, as well as racial segregation in public education. Just concocting explanations to justify oppressing multiple groups and creating a racial hierarchy so that those at the top can continue to consolidate and maintain their power, and those at the bottom argue over who's better and who's more highly positioned in the hierarchy. Another reason it's really important to study history and learn from it is so that you can look at the present moment and understand everything that led us here, but also to identify actual reality. We are not living in 1930s Germany. We're living in the United States, as the United States has always been. During the Great Depression, race scientists further sought to justify economic and social inequality by establishing a genetic basis for the transmission of intelligence and other characteristics, such as criminal behavior and work ethic. These negative traits were in the genes, and thus inevitable, inherited as a legacy, and a predictor of low social status. Hereditarian theory was the foundation of the United States eugenics movement that inspired ideals of racial hygiene in Nazi Germany. It would, in fact, take the tragedy of the Holocaust, which involved the state-sanctioned murder of approximately 6 million Jews, as well as other quote-unquote undesirables by the Nazi regime and its allies, to force the retreat of scientific racism. We're not 1930s Nazi Germany. We're the United States, as we've always been. Fascism and eugenics is what built this country, and it is vital that we study actual history in order to understand that and build a better world instead of it. Again, if you can find this book, I highly recommend it. I haven't even finished it, and I learned so much, and I am so excited about it, and I need more people to know about it and understand it. The future of our world and our community literally depends on it. Anti-Blackness is at the core of so many of the atrocities we see globally. So much of the oppression we all experience. We can't stop that, undo it, build a new and better world without first really, truly understanding it. Finally, I'll say anti-intellectualism is a core tenet of fascism. That alone should inspire you to learn as much as possible. It has me.